Good afternoon and welcome to the Outdoor Art Club webinar featuring the insight of the League of Women Voters for our upcoming election on November 8th. For those of you who are not familiar with the Outdoor Art Club, we are a nonprofit women's organization founded in 1902. The club engages in civic, cultural, and charitable work in our community. This is the second webinar of our public speaker series this year. We anticipate many wonderful questions from you, our audience, and ask that you please direct all of your questions to Q&A, not chat. For over 100 years, the League of Women Voters has been empowering voters and defending democracy. They're a diverse, nonpartisan, grassroots group of women and men with a long-standing tradition of educating voters. They envision democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. We're fortunate to have Lynn Dooley and Carol Joy Harris from Marin and Sonoma League of Women Voters lead the presentation of 7 statewide propositions. Their reputation for covering all topics from both sides is why we're excited to hear from them today.
Thank you, Susan. It's so nice to be here. We appreciate the invitation to be at the Mill Valley Outdoor Art Club, and we appreciate being invited to speak with you. As Susan just mentioned, I'm Lynn Dooley, and this is my co-host, Carol Joy Harris. Joining us behind the scenes is Didi Vutori, our tech guru. We are all members of the Marin League of Women Voters, and we are all honored to be here.
As Susan mentioned, the League of Women Voters was founded over 100 years ago with a mission to empower voters and defend democracy. To that end, today we will be presenting a clear, unbiased overview of the 7 California state ballot propositions. Some of the material presented is pre-recorded. Lynn and I will be adding current updates and addressing your questions. Lynn?
Thank you, Carol Joy. A team of 20+ members of the Sonoma and Marin League of Women Voters volunteered to create these presentations. First, we broke into teams to research each one and write the proposition scripts. Then a team of presenters recorded the individual videos that you will see here today. We will stop after each proposition to give you updates and take your questions. When you have a question, as Susan said, please put it in the Zoom Q&A at the bottom of your screen. We won't be using chat for questions. We will do our best to answer your questions. If we don't get to your question, we'll be available after the presentation to continue answering questions. Please remember to mute yourself during the presentation. Thank you. This year, we were fortunate to have political science students from Sonoma State University helping us with campaign financing. You'll see one student, Anthony O'Connor, as a presenter on Proposition 27. We also have service learning students from Dominican University from their citizenship and immigration class helping us make these presentations. One of these students, Ryan Bergman, is joining us today behind the scenes. It's been a pleasure to work with them all. Please keep in mind, we are all volunteers. These recordings are not perfect, but they are accurate and we hope you find them informative. So now let's get started with Proposition 1.
Hi, I'm Elaine Biagini, and this is my co-host, Lorraine Kelman. We're going to talk to you about Proposition 1. You'll see it on your ballot as Constitutional Right to Reproductive Freedom Amendment, a legislative constitutional amendment. So what is the question behind Prop 1?
The question is, should the state of California amend the California Constitution to include the right to reproductive freedom, which would include the right to an abortion and the right to choose or refuse contraceptives?
What is the current situation around this proposition?
Existing California statutory law provides, under the Reproductive Privacy Act, that every individual possesses a fundamental right of privacy with respect to personal reproductive decisions.
So how does that apply here?
Currently in California, every individual has the fundamental right to choose or refuse birth control and to choose to bear a child or obtain an abortion. And under current law, abortion is legal in California up to fetal viability and legal after viability only if the procedure is necessary to protect the life or health of the mother.
Is viability defined by the state currently?
Yes, viability is defined as the point in gestation when a fetus can survive outside the womb.
So what does Prop 1 propose?
Prop 1 would prohibit the state from denying or interfering with an individual's reproductive freedom in their most intimate decisions. This would include their fundamental right to choose to have an abortion and to choose or refuse contraceptives.
Does this impact an individual's right to privacy?
No. Prop 1 specifies that nothing contained in the measure narrows or limits the right to privacy or to equal protection. It also specifies that this constitutional amendment is intended to further the constitutional right of privacy and the constitutional right to not be denied equal protection.
Is there any other impact worth noting?
Yes, the California Constitution is the state's highest law. Only a new amendment can change the Constitution. A new amendment requires a 2/3 vote of the legislature and also a vote of the people.
So what is the fiscal impact of Prop 1?
There is no direct fiscal impact because reproductive rights are already protected by state law.
What do supporters say about Prop 1?
Supporters say California should not sit on the sidelines as unprecedented attacks on the fundamental right to choose endanger women across the country. This measure will ensure that women in our state have an absolute right to a safe and legal abortion that is protected in our Constitution. And supporters also say, we know from history that abortion bans don't end abortion. They only outlaw safe abortions. We must preserve the fundamental reproductive rights of women here in California because they are under attack elsewhere.
And opponents? What are opponents saying, Lorraine?
Opponents say, shouldn't our leaders be asking, how do we render abortion unnecessary? Voters should encourage our leaders to find real solutions to abortion to prevent abortion. And opponents also say, the state's political leadership continues to stubbornly cling to the practice of abortion and the throwaway culture. The language of Proposition 1 is overly vague, reckless, and could further endanger children, especially among the poor and marginalized in our state.
What about campaign financing? How does that look for Prop 1?
In support, $3.1 million has been contributed by Atkins Ballot Measure Committee, Yes on Proposition 1. The major donors are on your screen. In opposition, Women for Reproductive Facts, No on Prop 1 has been established. 2 individuals have made contributions. See them on your screen.
And in conclusion, what does a yes vote mean, Lorraine?
A yes vote means that the California Constitution would be changed to expressly include existing rights to reproductive freedom, such as the right to choose whether or not to have an abortion and to use or refuse contraceptives.
And how about a no vote?
A no vote means that the California Constitution would not be changed to expressly include existing rights to reproductive freedom. These rights, however, would continue to exist under current state law.
Thank you, Lorraine.
My pleasure, Elaine.
Since our video was made, the California Medical Association has increased their contribution in support to $1 million. The opponents and opposing totals remain the same. Are there any questions on Proposition 1?
We do have a question on Proposition 1 from one of the OAC members. But before we get there, I wanted to add that the video that we just showed you is not as updated as we had originally thought. And so the contributions have changed more than we are mentioning here. And this is not to anything against Carol Joy. She's doing a great job. But the contributions in support of Proposition 1 are now quite much higher, $9.9 million. It comes from the Atkins Ballot Measure Committee, Yes on Proposition 1. $5 million has been contributed by the Federation of Indians of Great and Rancheria, $850,000 from the California Medical Association, and $500,000 from M. Quinn Delaney, who's a philanthropist and fundraiser. In opposition, there is money that has been contributed now, $863,000 to the California Together, no on Prop 1, $500,000 contributed from the Knights of Columbus Supreme Council, $1,000 from David Lucetti, who's the president and CEO of Pacific Coast Companies, and $86,000 from the Roman Catholic Church, various contributions. Okay, this question that Joan Murray asked is, our California State Voters Guide states that Prop 1 will not have any fiscal impact, but the opponents claim California taxpayers will be paying for late-term abortions. That's contradictory. What does the League know? So the reason that Prop 1 says that there will be no fiscal impact is because state law already covers all impact financially from abortions and their impact on the state. So this will not change how money is allocated or whether money is earned or spent. It will, you can ask for, through various channels at the state currently, you can ask for an abortion at any stage up to fetal viability. So that is just something that needs to be reviewed through the current system. And that is why it says that there are no fiscal changes to this proposition. All right, so we also have another question. Please clarify the process for the state constitutional amendment. That is, has legislature already had a vote 2/3? I'm jumping around here, plus a yes. Okay, so in order for Proposition 1 to be put on the ballot, it did have to have a 2/3 vote from the legislature, and it is coming now as a vote to the people. So that has currently happened, and this vote will be that vote for the people. The point in the video is that once it has been approved, should it be approved, then it would take the legislature, 2/3 vote of the legislature again for a future ballot, and it would take a new vote of the people to change it. So if something changes in the state and all of a sudden it is in question again, it would have to go through that process to be changed. I hope that answers your question. Previous question, will approval of Prop 1 have any impact on people traveling to California for abortions or contraceptives? Will they be protected, or is that unknown, untested? So that remains as it is now. State law protects abortion in the state of California. There has been legislation approved that opens our borders to people wanting to come for abortions currently. Proposition 1 won't change that. All of the state law will remain exactly the same. The only thing that Prop 1 will change is whether it becomes a constitutional amendment. Okay, any other questions on Prop 1? All right.
Okay, well then, thank you, Lynn. Next is Proposition 26.
Hello, my name is Leona Judson, and this is Gail Peterson. And we're going to talk to you today about Proposition 26. You'll see on your ballot, it says allows in-person roulette, dice games, sports wagering on tribal lands. It is an initiative constitutional amendment and statute. So Gail, what is the question behind Proposition 26?
The question is, should the state of California amend the state constitution and state law to allow sports wagering at American Indian casinos and licensed racetracks, and legalize roulette and dice games at casinos?
Can you tell us some of the background on Proposition 26?
The California Constitution and state law limits the types of gambling within the state to the state lottery, card rooms, betting on horse racing, and gambling at tribal casinos. There are 4 racetracks, 79 compacted tribes, and 66 casinos in the state. Currently, sports wagering, roulette, and games with dice are not allowed. The Supreme Court eliminated the federal ban on sports wagering in 2018.
How does gambling at American Indian casinos work?
When a tribe wants to offer gambling on its lands, federal law requires that the state negotiate a compact with the tribe with oversight from the California Department of Justice, county district attorneys, and city attorneys.
What do tribal casinos pay now?
Currently, tribes pay $65 million to support state regulation and gambling addiction programs. They pay tens of millions of dollars to local governments each year, and larger casinos pay nearly $150 million each year to tribes that either do not operate casinos or have less than 350 slot machines.
So what does Proposition 26 propose?
Prop 26 would allow tribal casinos and 4 licensed racetracks to offer on-site betting on sports events like football, and would expand the types of games offered at tribal casinos to include roulette and dice games.
Does that include school sports?
No wagering would be allowed on high school sports or California college sports, and it would be limited to those 21 and older.
How will racetracks be affected?
Well, racetracks would have a net 10% tax on sports betting, with revenues going into a new California Sports Wagering Fund. The new fund's monies would first be used to help meet the required spending level on education. After that, the fund would be divided among the general fund, 70%, gambling law enforcement, 15%, gambling addiction and mental health programs, 15%.
And how will Proposition 26 affect tribal casinos?
Well, tribal casinos that choose to offer sports betting on tribal lands would be able to do so only after adjusting their compacts with the state to allow it. Each tribe's state and local compact would be amended to determine the amount of the fees to be paid, and the new compact would determine how funds would be distributed.
And how will violations be handled?
Well, any violations of gaming law would be brought to the district attorney, the attorney general, or to the courts. Civil lawsuits can be brought by citizens. Penalties assessed would go to the new California Sports Wagering Fund.
And what will be the fiscal effect of Proposition 26?
Well, impact on state and local revenues are hard to determine because much depends on the terms of the compacts between the state and the casinos, and on how much people who play the games or bet on sports will spend. Potentially, racetracks tax payments and civil penalties for violations of the law would increase state revenues by tens of millions of dollars. Increased costs to enforce and regulate the new wagering could potentially reach the low tens of millions of dollars each year. This could be offset by increased revenue.
So what are supporters saying?
Well, supporters say Prop 26 would guarantee that children don't have access to sports wagering by limiting it to casinos and racetracks. And supporters also say Prop 26 would limit sports wagering to highly regulated and safe facilities that are experienced in gambling operations and with resources to safely operate the activity.
And what do opponents say?
Well, opponents say Prop 26 would massively expand gambling in California for the benefit of large tribal casinos. Opponents also say Prop 26 is sponsored by powerful interests that will use the new enforcement rules to bury card rooms in frivolous lawsuits.
What about campaign financing? What does that look like?
Well, $73 million has been donated in support by the Yes on 26, No on 27 Coalition for Safe, Responsible Gaming PAC. The top donors to the PAC are on your screen. And in opposition, $41 million has been donated by the No on 26 Taxpayers Against Special Interest Monopolies PAC. And $1 million has also been donated by the No on the Gambling Power Grab PAC. Again, the top donors are on your screen.
So in conclusion, what does a yes vote mean?
The California state constitution will be amended to allow sports wagering in American Indian casinos, and at licensed racetracks. It will tax profits from sports wagering at racetracks at 10% and legalize roulette and dice games at casinos.
And what does a no vote mean?
A no vote opposes this initiative, thus continuing to prohibit sports betting in California and roulette and dice games at tribal casinos.
Well, thank you, Gail, for walking us through this very complicated proposition.
You're welcome, Leona.
Since our videos were made, support for Prop 26 is now $122 million. The Federated Indians of Great and Rancheria have increased their contribution to $32 million. The Pechanga Band of Luiseno Indians contributions are now $27 million, and the Yochi-Dihi Winton Nation has donated a total of $22 million. Funds opposing Prop 26 now total $44 million. The major donors remain the same. Park West casinos have increased their contribution to $7 million. So we can take questions in the Q&A for Prop 26, or because they're so tied together, we can wait and see Prop 27 and attack them both at the same time, whatever you'd like to do. Just wait a minute and see if anybody would like to ask a question. All right, well, that's amazing. They're very confusing. All right, so if you're ready, Dee Dee, let's go on to 27.
Hi, I'm Anthony O'Connor with Sonoma State University, and this is Jana Cosgrove with the Sonoma League of Women Voters, and we are going to talk to you about Proposition 27. You'll see it on your ballot as allows online and mobile sports wagering outside tribal lands. It is an initiative, constitutional amendment, and statute. So, what is the question behind Proposition 27?
The question is, should there be a constitutional amendment and statute that allows online and mobile sports betting outside of tribal land in the state of California for those 21 and older?
What is Prop 27's current situation?
Anthony, good question. The California Constitution and statutes limit gambling to the California lottery, card rooms, betting on horses, and gambling in the American Indian-owned casinos that have an agreement or a compact between the tribe and the state. Sports betting is not legal in California. California currently has compacts with 79 tribes, and tribes currently operate 66 casinos in 28 counties.
And what do tribes pay currently?
Currently, tribes pay $65 million to support state regulatory and gambling addiction program costs, tens of millions of dollars to local governments each year, and tribes operating larger casinos pay nearly $150 million each year to tribes that either do not operate casinos or have less than 350 slot machines.
What does Prop 27 propose?
Anthony, Proposition 27 would change the California Constitution and state law to allow online sports betting over the internet and mobile devices. It would allow adults 21 or older to bet on sports events online, including college sports and other events such as award shows. The bettor would not need to be at a casino to place the bet.
Would school sports be involved?
Nope, no betting would be allowed on high school sports.
How would online gaming companies be involved?
Prop 27 would enable large established gambling companies to offer online sports betting under the tribe's name and branding. These gaming companies must strike a deal with a state compacted tribe to operate in California. There would be some limitation on tribal rights and which gambling companies can participate.
Would there be any regulation?
Yes. Proposition 27 would create a new division to regulate online sports betting that would operate within the state's Justice Department. Fines from illegal gambling would go into a new fund, the California Online Sports Betting Trust Fund.
Are there other revenues involved?
Yes. In addition to fees on penalties, the new fund would collect revenues from a one-time licensing fee of $10 million from each tribe to the state with a renewal fee of $1 million every 5 years. A one-time licensing fee of $100 million from gambling corporations to the state with a renewal fee of $10 million every 5 years. And finally, a 10% tax on all companies or tribes involved in sports betting. Tax is based on gross amount minus payouts for winning bets, promotional fees, and federal gambling taxes.
Then where would the fund revenues go?
The new fund would pay state regulatory costs. After that, 85% of the remaining funds would be allocated to a new California Solutions to Homelessness and Mental Health Support Fund for permanent and interim housing. 15% of the revenues for tribes not involved in online and mobile sports betting would go to the Tribal Economic Development Account for tribal government, public health, education, infrastructure, and economic development.
Is there anything else?
Yes, the new fund would be seeded by a $30 million loan from the State General Fund to be repaid within 5 years.
What would the fiscal effects be?
Anthony, the fiscal effects would depend on how many licensed entities offer sports betting and the amount of expenses they subtract from the monthly amount owed to the state. Plus, the fiscal effects would depend on the number of people who choose to make sports bets. Therefore, increased state revenues could be in the hundreds of millions of dollar range and would probably not exceed $500 million, with increased regulatory costs in the mid-tens of millions of dollars.
What do supporters say?
Supporters say this measure will generate hundreds of millions of dollars each year in the solutions for homelessness and mental health. And they say will benefit all California tribes, including those without casinos.
And what do opponents say?
Opponents say 90% of the sports betting revenue will go to companies out of state and out of the country. And they say these measures are not a fix to homelessness, but rather a massive explosion of gaming that will directly undercut tribal sovereignty and self-sufficiency.
Can you tell us about campaign financing?
Sure. $100 million has been donated in support by the Yes on 27 Californians for Solutions to Homelessness and Mental Health Support PAC. See the top donors to the PAC on your screen. And $114.13 million has been donated in opposition by the No on 27 Californians for Tribal Sovereignty and Safe Gaming, and Yes on 26, No on 27 Coalition for Safe, Responsible Gaming Committees. The top donors are on your screen.
In conclusion, what does a yes vote mean?
A yes vote creates a constitutional amendment and statute that allows online sports betting for those 21 and over in the state of California. It allows gaming tribes and online sports betting companies partnered with gaming tribes to operate in the state. And it creates a 10% tax on revenue generated from sports betting and licensing fees.
And what does a no vote mean?
A no vote means that online sports betting in California will continue to be illegal.
Thank you very much, Jana, for the information. This has been absolutely wonderful.
Thanks, Anthony, for all the questions.
Support for Proposition 27 now totals $169 million. The corporation owning FanDuel has now contributed $35 million. The corporation owning DraftKings total contributions are up to $34 million, and Penn Gaming has contributed $25 million. Opposition now totals $214 million. The San Manuel Band of Mission Indians contributions are now $78 million. Federated Indians of Great and Rancheria have contributed $31 million, and Pechanga Band of Luceno Indians total is now $27 million. So now, are there any questions on Prop 27 or on 26 and 27? Lynn?
Yes, it seems like there are a couple of questions. Jim Casper asks, as with Prop 1, it sounds like the legislature has already voted on and met the necessary percentage for both Prop 26 and 27. So I thought I had the answer to that just right off the top of my tongue. but I will double check this. My understanding is that both these propositions were put on the ballot by signature gathering, not through the legislature. So I want to make sure that that's correct. While we're looking at another of the videos, I'll look that up. But my understanding is that both of these were put on the ballot through a gathering of signatures. Another question is, are the licensing fees collected from each online gambling company and each tribe? Yes. So the tribes have to pay, the gambling companies have to pay. And in order for any of the gambling companies to participate, they have to associate themselves with a tribe. They have to negotiate a deal between themselves, and then the tribes have to negotiate a deal with the state. So everyone has to pay those licensing fees separately, and then they all pay each other in addition. I hope that answers your question. Anybody else have questions while we're at it? 26, 27? Okay, so let's move on to 28.
Hi, I'm Joan Wrench, and this is my cohort, Ann Wakely. We're going to talk to you today about Proposition 28. You will see it on your ballot as provides additional funding for arts and music education in public schools. It is an initiative statute. So, Ann, what is the question behind Proposition 28?
The question is, shall the state provide an additional source of annual funding for public schools, including charter schools, to supplement arts education programs for preschool and K-12 students?
What is the current situation behind Proposition 28?
Well, the California Constitution mandates that the state set aside a minimum amount each year from the general fund and local property taxes to fund public schools. In most years, the state must provide about 40% of general fund revenue to meet this requirement.
Does the state have specific requirements for art education?
Yes, the state requires schools to offer instruction in visual and performing arts in some form to students in kindergarten through grade 12. But local school districts decide on the particular courses and who will teach them. The state does not provide additional funding specifically for arts and music education.
So what does Proposition 28 propose?
Proposition 28 proposes that beginning in 2023, the state will provide supplemental funding for arts and music education for students in preschool through grade 12 in public schools, including charter schools.
And where will that money come from?
The additional money would come from the state general fund and would be equal to 1% of the minimum required amount that the school district received the year before.
And how will the funds be distributed?
The funds would be distributed according to a formula based on enrollment. Also, schools with a higher percentage of economically disadvantaged students would receive more money. 80% of this extra funding must be used to hire arts teaching staff, with an exception made for school districts and charter schools with fewer than 500 students. The remaining 20% is for materials and programs. The school principal or program director decides on how funds are spent.
Is there any reporting required?
Yes, school districts must report to the state annually and certify that the extra funding was spent on arts education.
And what are the fiscal effects?
Proposition 28 would increase state costs by about $1 billion annually beginning next year. This amount is less than 0.5% of the state's total general fund budget.
So what do supporters say about Prop 28?
Supporters say that only 1 in 5 California schools has a dedicated teacher for arts and music programs. They also say Proposition 28 will benefit all students, especially students from communities of color, who often experience a lack of access to arts and music education, and it does not raise taxes.
And what do the opponents say?
The opponents say that this will reduce flexibility in the state budget, limiting the ability to respond to future changes and fund emerging critical needs. Opponents also say that spending on California K-12 public education is going up while enrollment is going down. As a result, per student expenditures adjusted for inflation are the highest since at least 1988.
And what about campaign financing? What does that look like?
Well, the PAC Yes on 28, Californians for Arts and Music in Schools, has donated $8 million to date in support. The top donors of this PAC are displayed on your screen. At this point, no organized opposition has been declared.
In conclusion, what does a yes vote mean?
A yes vote means that the state would provide funding specifically for arts education in public schools for students in preschool and grades K through 12. This amount would be in addition to the constitutionally required public school funding.
And what does a no vote mean?
A no vote means that funding for arts education in public schools would continue to depend on state and local budget decisions.
Thank you, Anne.
Of course, Joan.
So, support for Prop 28 now totals $9 million. Austin Butner and the Fender Musical Instruments Corporation, Austin Butner is an individual, Fender Musical Instruments is an organization. They have both added to their contributions. The California Teachers Association has added $1 million in contribution. There are still no contributions in opposition to Prop 28. So do we have any questions for Prop 28 in the Q&A? I don't see any at the moment. All right, then when you're ready, Dee Dee, let's move on to 29.
Hi, I'm Barbara Strong, and this is Carol Joy Harris. We're here to talk to you about Proposition 29. You'll see it on your ballot as requires on-site licensed medical professional at kidney dialysis clinics and establishes other state requirements. Carol Joy, what is the question behind Proposition 29?
Well, the question is, should outpatient dialysis clinics be required to have a physician, nurse practitioner, or physician assistant on site at all hours when patients are being treated? And should they be required to provide various clinic-related information to patients and the state?
Can you tell us about the background behind Proposition 29?
Sure. About 80,000 patients in California receive dialysis services from 650 chronic dialysis clinics. Dialysis clinics are licensed by federal standards. 2 out-of-state for-profit companies, DaVita Incorporated and Fresenius Medical Care, operate almost 3/4 of the dialysis clinics in California. The remaining clinics are operated by a variety of nonprofit and for-profit entities. And currently, federal law requires clinics to report any infections related to treatment.
What is the current staffing at dialysis clinics?
All patients have their own physicians whom they must see once per month. All clinics have a medical director who is a physician on staff.
And how are insurance companies involved?
Most patients on dialysis are covered by Medicare and/or Medi-Cal, which pay a fixed rate for dialysis services. About 10% of dialysis patients are covered by group and individual health insurance plans that often pay multiple times the amounts paid by Medicare and/or Medi-Cal because their rates are negotiated with each insurance company. After a period of time, all dialysis patients are covered by Medicare.
What is Proposition 29 proposing?
Proposition 29 would require that a licensed physician, nurse practitioner, or physician assistant, in each case with at least 6 months of experience in kidney care, must be on site at all times when dialysis is being performed. Telehealth may be used for up to 1 year if no such person is available on site.
Anything else?
Yes. Clinics could not discriminate among patients based on their source of payment and could not close or reduce hours without permission from the state. Clinics would also be required to report information about dialysis-related infections among their patients. And clinics would be required to report to patients the name of any physician with more than a 5% interest in the clinic.
And what would be the fiscal effects?
The clinics would probably have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars more annually for staff salaries. State and local governments might have to pay tens of millions of dollars more annually if clinics close and patients must go to more expensive facilities, such as emergency rooms, or if clinics negotiate higher reimbursement rates.
What do supporters say?
Supporters say requiring a physician, nurse practitioner, or physician assistant to be present during a dangerous procedure like dialysis is common sense and a matter of patient safety. Supporters also say the big corporations operating dialysis clinics can easily make the required staffing changes and still profit hundreds of millions of dollars a year.
And what do opponents say?
Opponents say clinics already use specially trained technicians, and every patient is under the care of their own kidney doctor, so more oversight is unnecessary. Opponents also say Prop 29 would take thousands of skilled medical staff from hospitals where they're needed and place them in administrative jobs.
Can you tell us about campaign financing?
Yes. $7.9 million has been contributed in support by the Californians for Kidney Dialysis Patient Protection PAC. You can see the top donor on your screen. And $36.9 million has been contributed in opposition by the No on 29 Stop Yet Another Dangerous Dialysis PAC. Again, the top donors are on your screen.
In summary, what does a yes vote mean?
A yes vote supports this ballot initiative to require dialysis clinics to have at least one physician, nurse practitioner, or physician assistant while patients are being treated, report data on dialysis-related infections, and not discriminate against patients based on the source of payment for care.
And what does a no vote mean?
A no vote opposes this ballot initiative to require dialysis clinics to have at least one physician, nurse practitioner, or physician assistant while patients are being treated, report data on dialysis-related infections, and not discriminate against patients based on the source of payment for care.
Thank you, Carol Joy.
My pleasure, Barbara. Support for Prop 29 remains at $8 million. The top donor remains the Service Employees International Union, United Healthcare Workers West. Opposition now totals $86 million. DaVita Incorporated has increased its contribution to $53 million. Fresenius Medical Care has increased to $27 million, and U.S. Renal Care has donated $6 million. Are there any questions on Prop 29?
Yes, there are a couple of questions in the Q&A. Thank you, Carol Joy. First, before we answer questions, didn't she do a great job? Carol Joy, you're everywhere. I appreciate it very much.
My pleasure.
Okay, so Christina Orth asks, how does this affect access to clinics? So I guess we go back to what supporters say and what opponents say. Supporters, in regard to how this will affect access to clinics, supporters say that it shouldn't affect access because these companies make a very large amount of money and they should be able to absorb all these changes. Opponents say that because they will have to hire many, many more staff, and whether those staff are available, it might make access to clinics less available because they don't have the staffing that is required. Now, the proposition allows for that the first year telehealth services can be used if they don't have the staffing. But if the telehealth services have been used for a year and this passes, then according to the opponents, they may be forced to close the clinics because of lack of staff. So I hope that answers your question in a nonpartisan way. Okay, there's another question. Wasn't this on the ballot last year? Is this proposal different? So this has been on the ballot the last two ballots. So we've had it twice. Last year, it is very, very similar. There are very few changes between last year and this year. The only thing that I can find that's different is that now patients have to announce to the doctors who are trying to have a 5% interest in the clinic, have to announce that to the patients. That's the only thing I can see that's different. Currently, any infections are reported to the federal government. In this proposition, the infections would have to be reported to both the federal and the state government. But that was also included last time in 2020. So as far as I can see, there's very little difference. And that's having gone through it quite a bit. So thank you for the questions. There's one more. What has occurred that has caused the desire for physicians on site? So that is also a very interesting question. The people who are on site now are nurses who are trained in kidney care. In order to have a doctor on site, the hope is that there will be less problems, that there would be a more immediate response if there is a problem. At the same time, the people who are opposed to this measure say that hasn't been a problem. So I don't really have a clear and definitive answer for you on that. The kidney, this is a difficult circumstance for people to be in need of kidney care, kidney dialysis. And there hasn't been any red flag that's come up that I've been able to find that was the impetus behind this proposition. So I hope that generally answers your question. I can give you resources for you to do a little more reading if you'd like, and that would be, I'd be happy to do that. Okay, so that was Proposition 29. So let's go on to Proposition 30.
Hi, I'm Karen Weeks, and this is Regina Bianucci-Russ. We're here to talk to you about Proposition 30. You'll see it on your ballot as provides funding for programs to reduce air pollution and prevent wildfires by increasing tax on personal income over $2 million. Proposition 30 was put on the ballot by petition signatures and requires a majority vote for approval. So, Regina, what is the question behind Proposition 30?
Yes, Karen. The question is, should the tax rate on personal income above $2 million be increased by 1.75% and the revenue dedicated to lowering greenhouse gas emissions through zero-emission vehicle and infrastructure subsidies and wildfire suppression and prevention programs?
Can you give us some background?
Sure. California is currently experiencing severe drought, increasingly devastating wildfire, and poor air quality. Gas-powered vehicles and wildfire smoke are the two largest sources of greenhouse gas emissions in the state.
Are there current laws addressing these situations?
Yes, state law requires California reduce its greenhouse gas levels by 40% below 1990 levels by 2030. State law also requires ride-sharing companies like Uber and Lyft to have 90% of their drivers using zero-emission vehicles by 2030. But zero-emission vehicles are expensive and unaffordable for many residents, and the state lacks sufficient charging stations to support increased use of these vehicles. The state recently committed to spending $10 billion over the next 5 years on zero-emission vehicles, and on average spends $2.2 to $4 billion annually on wildfire response.
How about the wildfire situation? What is the background on that?
The California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, which is CAL FIRE, is facing rising costs for its programs as fires have become increasingly catastrophic.
What does Proposition 30 propose?
Proposition 30 would increase personal income taxes by 1.75% of those individuals making over $2 million a year effective January 2023.
And how would the money generated be allocated?
20% of the funds would go to wildfire prevention and suppression programs. 45% of the funds would be allocated for incentives to purchase zero-emission vehicles, and 35% would go toward the purchase and installation of zero-emission vehicle charging stations.
Are there any other stipulations?
Yes, the proposition mandates at least half of the new funds collected for zero emission vehicles and charging stations would go to benefit low income and disadvantaged communities.
Would this tax be ongoing?
No, the tax increase would end on January 1, 2043, or earlier if there are 3 consecutive calendar years in which statewide greenhouse gas emissions are 80% below 1990 levels.
And what would be the fiscal effect?
The new tax would generate $3.5 billion to $5 billion annually, growing over time. That funding would support an increase in zero emission vehicle programs by $2.8 to $4 billion annually. Additionally, the proposition would increase state funding for wildfire prevention and response by $700 million to $1 billion annually. Proposition 30 could also decrease government costs related to firefighting, cleanup, and recovery, reducing the cost of wildfire management in the future.
So, Regina, what are supporters saying?
Supporters are saying existing programs are insufficient to address the state's poor air quality, which is largely caused by vehicle exhaust and wildfire smoke. Proposition 30 would make zero emission vehicles more affordable and fund the necessary infrastructure to support them. And existing funding for wildfire prevention and suppression are inadequate. Proposition 30 provides needed funding for firefighters and equipment.
And what are the opponents saying?
Opponents are saying the Proposition 30 tax increase is not necessary. California is already investing billions of dollars on multi-year climate programs. Proposition 30 commits money from income taxes, normally a major source of school funding, to zero emission vehicles and fire suppression interests. Rideshare companies will heavily benefit from Proposition 30 instead of having to fund these changes themselves.
Can you tell us about campaign financing?
Sure. As of September 9th, $16 million has been contributed in support of the top donor being Lyft. And in opposition, $4.3 million has been contributed. See the top donors on your screen.
In summary, what does a yes vote mean?
A yes vote means the taxpayers would pay an additional 1.75% in personal income taxes over $2 million to fund zero emission vehicle programs and wildfire response and prevention activities.
And what about a no vote?
A no vote means there would be no changes made to taxes of personal income of $2 million or above.
Thank you so much, Regina.
You're welcome, Karen.
So support, hold on, just lost that. Support for Prop 30 now totals $37 million. Lyft has increased its contribution to $35 million. The Electrical Workers Union, IBEW, has contributed $1 million in support. The opposition to Prop 30 is now $7 million. The top contributors remain the same, with the addition of philanthropist Catherine Dean, who has added $1 million. The new total reflects various small donations. So we do have a couple of questions in the chat. What percentage of tax do people who make $2 million pay now? That's a good question. Currently, it's not quite as straightforward as that. 12.3% is charged on people married, filing jointly, who make above $1.25 million. And then an additional 1% income tax is charged to people who earn over $1 million. And that goes to a mental health program that was an earlier proposition. So before this proposition, the total is 13.3% that is charging people who are in that upper level of income. Okay, so then the next question is, how does Lyft serve to benefit its drivers buy their own cars? Yes, so the state has mandated that Lyft and Uber must have all their vehicles be zero emission vehicles by 2030. By doing that, and in doing that, Lyft is going to have a limited has going to have limited access to people who can drive for them. So if they want to increase their fleet, they're either going to have to subsidize people to help them drive, or they're going to have to get the state to subsidize them for them. So their interest is to avoid paying for these changes to their own drivers' vehicles, even though they're not obligated to do that now. But if they want to have a significant fleet, they're going to have to in the future. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, this is our last proposition, Proposition 31. We're on to that.
Hi, I'm Lauren Vreeland Long, and this is Connie Williams and Bill Becker. We're here to talk to you about Proposition 31. You will see it on your ballot as referendum on a 2020 law prohibiting retail sale of certain flavored tobacco products. So Connie, what is the question behind Proposition 31?
Lauren, the question is, should the current law prohibiting the retail sale of certain flavored tobacco products be approved?
And what is Proposition 31's situation?
Senate Bill 793 was passed by the California State Legislature and signed by the governor in 2020. This law bans in-person stores and vending machines from selling most flavored tobacco products and tobacco product flavor enhancers. But Senate Bill 793 did not go into effect because a petition to demand a referendum on the law qualified for this ballot. Proposition 31 is that referendum.
And for the record, Connie, can you remind us what is a referendum?
Sure. A veto referendum is a type of citizen-initiated ballot measure that asks voters whether to uphold or to repeal a law passed by the state legislature. For Prop 31, voters are asked to either uphold the current law, which is SB 793, or to repeal that current law.
Good. Thanks. What's the Proposition 31 propose?
So Proposition 31 asks the voters to decide whether Senate Bill 793 can or cannot go into effect. So voting for Proposition 31 will allow the law to go into effect, meaning that in-person stores and vending machines cannot sell flavored tobacco products and tobacco product flavor enhancers. If the current law goes into effect, a $250 penalty will be charged for each violation. Voting against Proposition 31 will repeal that law, meaning in-person stores and vending machines can continue to sell flavored tobacco products and tobacco product flavor enhancers.
Thank you, Connie. So Bill, what is the fiscal effect of Proposition 31?
The fiscal effect will depend on the consumer response. If there is a less purchasing of tobacco products, then the tax revenues will be reduced. Proposition 31 would likely reduce state tobacco tax revenues by an amount ranging from tens of millions of dollars to around $100 million annually.
And what are supporters saying?
Supporters say voting on yes on this measure would save lives and protect young people from getting hooked on nicotine. Supporters also say Big Tobacco is using all of its resources to overturn California Senate Bill 793 in order to profit from the lethal addiction of Black and young smokers. This is the latest step in their long racist history of poisoning our communities.
And what do opponents say, Bill?
Opponents say this is ultimately an issue of personal choice and freedom. We already have strict tobacco laws, including age restrictions, which should take care of several gateway drug concerns. Opponents also say prohibition has never worked and it won't work now.
Can you tell us about campaign financing for Prop 31?
Sure. Supporters have established the Yes on Proposition 31 committee to protect California kids. PACT. 5.5 million has been donated to the PACT to date. The top donors to the PACT are seen on your screen. The opponents have established the No on Proposition 31, Californians Against Prohibition PACT. 21.7 million has been donated thus far. See the top donors on your screen.
Thank you, Bill. So Connie, in summary, what does a yes vote mean?
Okay, a yes vote means that you are voting to uphold or to keep the law and ban the sale of flavored tobacco products.
And a no vote?
A no vote means that you are voting to repeal the law and thus allow the sale of flavored tobacco products.
Thank you so much, Connie and Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Support for Prop 31 is now $6 million. Oops. Disembodied there.
It's okay.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Support for Prop 31 is now $6 million. Michael Bloomberg's contribution and support now totals $4.3 million, and the California Teachers Association has added $250,000. In opposition, both R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company and Philip Morris USA have increased their donations to $11 million each for a new total of $23 million.
And there is a question in the chat. This may be difficult to answer. Prop 30, there's currently some state funding for EV infrastructure. Does Prop 30 provide additional funding for these programs, or does it displace and replace some of the existing funding? So this is all additional money. All the money that goes into this pot will come from this 1.75% tax on the $2 million or more earners. Currently, the law is that the $10 billion are spent on ZEVs and charging stations. That's what's currently in the state law, and it's to be spent over 5 years. 2 to 4 billion is spent on wildfires annually. So this would be in addition to that. So that was our last proposition. You can see these individual proposition videos and learn more about the League of Women Voters by visiting our website, marinlwv.org. And before you go, Carol Joy has some important voting information.
Okay, first of all, please remember Election Day is November 8th. Every active registered voter in California will automatically be sent a vote by mail ballot. If you recently moved or changed your name, you will need to re-register. Voters are encouraged to vote by mail, or you can return your ballot or vote at any vote center. For more details, visit marinvotes.org. And most importantly, be sure to vote. Thank you.
Be sure to vote. Thank you. Thank you, Carol Joy. Thank you, Dee Dee behind the scenes. Thank you, Susan, Deborah, Jill, and everyone at the Mill Valley Outdoor Art Club. We'll be staying around to answer more questions if you want, but now back to you, Susan. Okay. Susan's going to come back in here any minute now. There she is. And you're muted, Susan.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's because I have my son and his wife here to help me. Thank you.
Yay.
Yay. Thank you so much for joining us today, especially thanks to Lynn, Carol Joy Harris, and the League of Women Voters, and especially all your volunteers behind the scene that made the tapes. They were really helpful and really informative. We hope you found this presentation helpful and informative. Please join us for our next Outdoor Art Club presentation, Embers of Awakening, From Firestones to Climate Healing, Thursday, November 17th at 1 p.m. Lynn and Carol Joy have kindly offered to stay a little longer for those of you who have additional questions. For those of you who are signing off, thank you for joining us today. For those with a few more questions, please stay on. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks, those that are leaving.
Thank you. Just quickly, want to answer Andrew's question. Will there be a replay of the Zoom call? Yes, Deborah's making a copy and she will post it for sure. And you can also see these individual videos or the whole video stream on our website, marinlwv.org. And then Pamela missed the answer to her question on Prop 1. Doesn't change. If it doesn't change current law, why is it necessary? It's necessary because they want to engrave it into the Constitution. So in order to change it, it needs that whole congressional legislative vote and a new vote of the people. They just want to cement it into the Constitution. Post it where? Andrew wants to know. Deborah, I'm not sure where it's going to be posted, but she'll answer you via typing, I'm sure. And I really appreciate anybody else have any questions. I'm happy to answer any more questions.
May I say that Deborah is going to send out to everyone that registered, which was 181 people. She'll send out a link to the OAC website so they can see it again if they want.
Wonderful. That is really great. Okay. Well, I don't see any additional questions, so maybe we don't need to hang around, but have our...
I have a question on the one on dialysis.
Yes.
If it keeps coming up year after year, who's driving this and spending millions of dollars to make the change?
Good question. It's the SEIU union, the Service International Employees Union. They are trying to, well, they keep wanting to change things in dialysis clinics. And I'm not sure if my saying that they are hoping to unionize the clinics is a non-partisan. I think that's a fact. The fact that they want to unionize the clinics is a fact as opposed to an opinion. So they really want to make an impact, and their bottom line goal is to improve patient care. That's their bottom line goal, but they keep bringing it back on the ballot because they want to encourage these clinics to let them do some things so that they won't keep coming back onto the ballot every time.
But if they had a percentage of incidents that have suggested that they're not managed well medically?
You know, that has not come up in any of our research that there have been incidents, because currently infections have to be reported. Any infractions have to be reported. There's a strict reporting process now that's in effect. So,
okay.
So Peggy Purcell is asking PAC money. Where does the PAC money go? Can you remind me, Peggy, what prop you're asking about? Because there are PACs for practically all of these guys. And
on both sides.
Yeah, on both sides. Everybody, for and against. Exactly. So maybe you can put in the Q&A what proposition you're asking where the PAC money goes.
It looks like Peggy may have left the webinar. I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. Well, if she has a question in the future, she can always email. Anybody can email us. Deborah and Susan both have our. Oh, Peggy says she's still here. Still here. So which proposition, Peggy? You don't have to give me a number. You can just tell me the topic if you want. All of them. Oh, well, okay. The PAC money goes to different places for different ones. So there's no money for one. In 26, they're creating PACs for, they're creating, oh, you mean, so if you're putting the money in the PAC, what do they do with the money in the PAC? I think that's your question. The money that's contributed to in opposition or in support is used for advertising and promotion. So it is used to run all those television ads that you've been seeing. It's used to run Facebook ads. It's used to advertise in the newspaper. I think that's what you mean. And so, yes, it's all going for promotion to try and influence voters. So, Deborah, is there a way to let Peggy speak? Can she speak? I'm not sure about that, Peggy.
I've asked Peggy to unmute.
To unmute.
It doesn't look like she's taking me up on my offer. Oh, here she comes.
Excuse me.
Hi. I've lost the screen.
Oh, that's why. Well, that's too bad. So have I answered your question?
Well, yes, the PAC monies are to promote their positions and advertising and media, etc., right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. That's a hell of a lot of money.
Yes, it is. It is. It's a lot of money.
With no guaranteed outcomes. And personally, when I listen to Bay Area news, whatever channel, it is so funny because you will hear, particularly on 26 and 27, all the reasons no, and then immediately following that is the reverse position.
Well,
and none of them ever, I mean, thank goodness I've been able to hear this discussion in a very objective and neutral way. This is totally terrific and have appreciated everyone's comments and explanations, etc. Thank you. I first attended the outdoor art group about 2 months ago when you were celebrating an anniversary, and became aware of your organization. And again, another thank you from me.
Well, Peggy, just one more thought on that, that I had when you were mentioning, and I just lost it, darn it. You were talking about, I wanted to say that the reason the television ads are confusing is because one of the PACs is yes on 26, no on 27. So it's a PAC that has a position on both. And so they run a yes on 26 ad immediately followed by a no on 27 ad. And that's the same money. So that's why you're seeing so much. And people are confused by that. They think there's only one proposition, or they were surprised to find out there are two propositions. So that's one of the reasons that you're getting that back to back, boom, boom information.
Yeah.
So. All righty. Well, thank you, everybody. It's been so great.
you.
We appreciate it very much. I had a great time.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
Always fun.
Yeah.
And we
it's always
hope to
fun.
keep our relationship going. You guys are always such an asset to our community. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, and